level. This is why.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Baseball Recruiting Deep Dive. We're joined today by a guy I taught him everything he knows. We coached together at Georgia Tech. Zeke Pinkham, recruiting coordinator at Kent State. This is a guy played at Louisville from 2016 to 2019, played in the World Series twice, part of some of those really good teams in Louisville history. Assistant at Georgia Tech for 4 years. That's where I got to know him and coached alongside him for a few years. And this past summer became the recruiting coordinator at Kent State and had a great year this year. So Zeke, thanks for joining us, man.
No, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, we're pumped to have you on, Zeke. I got to start with this. So I had two conversations with college coaches yesterday, and paraphrasing here, but both of them, in their own way, said we have not seen a high school player in June. Like we hate this operation right now. How are you guys handling the balance between seeing college guys right now and evaluating the high school player on the summer circuit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say we're approaching it on kind of like a needs base right now. We are in portal mode. We're not looking to add too much from the portal because we do have a really good high school class coming in, but we're kind of just approaching it right now as just fill our roster and get our roster ready to go for the next season. And then probably once July happens, we'll start looking at the 27s and the remainder of the 26s and be out there in Lake Point for the futures games and things like that.
Awesome. So another big thing that we're pretty much asking everybody, obviously with this house settlement finally getting approved, what's Kent State's? They going to be opting in? Are you guys going to be upping your scholarship numbers? Like, what is that going to look like for the future for you guys?
Yep, Kent State is opting in. As far as the scholarship amount and things like that, we are still learning how we're going to operate. Obviously, we're just taking it day by day as things are just consistently, popping up and things like that. And our administration is dealing with the revenue sharing and the whole 9 yards. So we're kind of just taking it one day at a time. But we're operating very similar to how we've done in the past, pretty much to just sum it up.
Yeah. Yeah, one question on that from me. So obviously when transfers weren't as relevant, right? If just breaking down recruiting classes, how you're going to be spending and everything. You used to be able to say, "Hey, we need a non-scholarship bat in 26. We need to replace our Friday night guy and pay big in 2027." But now you're factoring in obviously having to pay college kids as well. So is that like a day-to-day conversation you guys are having when guys are coming and going, like how you're gonna have to prioritize spending your money?
Yeah, that's a great question. We definitely discuss it as a staff and just go over like what we feel we need to spend our money on scholarship wise and things like that. And obviously, we probably approach it very similarly to a lot of other schools. Pitching is key. You got to have good arms to, win in college baseball. So we probably spend a lot of our money on the pitching side of things. And I don't see that changing, as long as I'm here in this program, just because you got to have good arms to win. We have a really good pitching coach and a really good foundation on that end. But we do discuss it on, areas of need and things like that. And, obviously just staying transparent with the times and just kind of, trying to adapt is going to be key when it comes to that stuff too.
So Zeke, big news at your last stop, Georgia Tech. Danny Hall retired after a Hall of Fame career, top 10 winningest coach all time. So you got to coach under really two legends and played under two legends like Dan McDonnell, they had a great run at Louisville this year in the College World Series, Danny Hall, and now James Ramsey, kind of one of your mentors, is taking over at Georgia Tech. So what are a couple things that you learned under DH and Ramsey that you've kind of taken with you to Kent State? I mean, everybody learns under people, kind of puts their own spin on it. But what are some of the bigger things you learned under those guys that you're implementing now at Kent State?
Yeah, great question. Whenever you're able to work under a legend like DH, you kind of got to be a sponge and absorb all the good things that he does. And honestly, I won't lie, I miss being around that guy. That guy is awesome. He's hilarious. Like best one-liners I've ever been around in my entire life. Uh, but one thing I took from DH was the consistency to just show up every day ready to win. The guy had a mission every day, and he showed up, and you knew what you were getting. He was consistent. He always came out with a positive attitude. The guys loved him, and he was just a joy to be around, which I think that's why he had so much longevity in this game. He was
Yeah.
just so easy to be around, and not just that, he was so knowledgeable. And obviously, you got to be able to know the game and teach it and develop it if you're going to stick around as long as he did. So I learned that from him, and then I incorporated a lot of what we do here at Kent from James. I was very fortunate to be around him for 4 years. He's without a doubt one of the best hitting coaches in college baseball, for sure, probably the best hitting coach I've ever been around. I've been around two really good hitting coaches with Ramsey and Eric Snyder at Louisville, and I was able to kind of implement the new school stuff that James had done at Georgia Tech over the last 4 years. The eye pitch machine, drive line plyo balls, and most of all, I think the biggest thing I brought from James was how we scout opposing pitchers. And Kyle, you've seen it. No one goes more in depth than James does on an opposing pitcher. There's not a thing that guy is not going to do that Georgia Tech hitters are not going to be ready for. So I learned that from James, and I brought that here. And I'll think of it this way, man. If you're going to go take a test, you better study for it. I don't like to show up for tests unprepared, and I like to think that our hitters are very prepared when they step in the box. And kind of the feedback I've gotten from them is they feel prepared, but they feel prepared by the questions they ask too. So they'll ask you questions like, "Hey, man, does that guy got a gyro slider? Hey, what's a fastball do?" All right, little things like that. Like we'll look at heat maps, things like that. But I think the biggest thing I took from James was the scouting reports. I've never seen someone go so in depth. And
That binder's like this thick, isn't it?
if I was a pitching coach in college baseball and I had to prepare a lot or prepare to pitch against a Georgia Tech lineup, knowing James is going to be the one I'm competing against, I'd be worried because
Hey,
they're
let's
gonna
come
be
up with a
prepared.
different pitch here that they've never seen before.
Yeah,
Let's
you
go
got to
that
develop
way.
one in a week.
Yeah, that that's super cool. So I guess staying on that on that subject, when you're recruiting a high school hitter now, and going out and seeing a bunch of at bats and games and everything, what are some of the main qualities you're looking for to kind of help fit them into the offense you're trying to develop?
Yeah, we look at it from the aspect of you got to have a tool. What tool can you bring to us? We like power, just like everybody else, but we like speed. We want to lead the nation in doubles, and we want to lead the nation in stolen bases. We hit around, let's say, 129 doubles this year, and we stole 130 bases. So we want to be a dynamic offense and be able to beat you in a variety of different ways. So if I go out to watch a high school kid, I'm looking for energy. How do you play the game? Do you have bat speed? How fast are you? What do you run down the line? Things like that, just to make sure you're fit for our program and what we try to do on a daily basis.
So when you are out recruiting, I think it's important for kids to understand, like, every coach has a thing where, man, that's a red flag. Like, that's something you see on the field. What is that for you in particular? Or a few things for you where you see a kid do this on the field, you're like, I'm out on him. I'm out on
Yeah,
him.
body language, 100%. I do not do bad body language. I don't want to look out at you for 9 innings and you have bad body language. There's actually an instance this past fall. I was out recruiting. I was at a PBR event. We actually committed a kid from that event, but there was a talented guy that I saw play, and I didn't like the way he was going about his business. And he's highly talented and things like that. And I just like, that's not a fit for our program. So I'm not a result oriented kind of recruiter. I look at your tools. I don't get caught up in results. Like if you go for 3 with 3 strikeouts or, you get hit around the yard, I look at it like, yeah, you were throwing strikes at least, things like
Yeah.
that. So I don't get caught up in the result. I get caught up in the process of things. So body language for me is an absolute non-negotiable. If you have bad body language, you're not a fit for Kent State.
Yeah. What about on the mound? Um, what are some of the main qualities you're looking for? Like how deep are you guys looking into data on guys in terms of development and projecting them out? How does that look for you guys?
Yeah, we definitely go into depth on the data side of things. We have TrackMan. We're actually putting in a pitching lab this summer. So we go in depth on that. But, just through like the recruiting process and the portal and evaluating young arms, man, you got to be able to throw strikes. We're not going to go on a guy that, doesn't throw strikes. Our pitching coach won't put up with it. Our head coach doesn't put up with it. I was a former catcher. Nothing's more frustrating than a guy sitting out there that just can't fill up the zone. So strikes. We like guys with velo just like everybody else, but you also got to have a second pitch. You got to have two pitches and be able to throw them for strikes, whether that's a changeup or a breaking ball. In our conference, and probably every conference in college baseball, if you could throw two pitches for strikes, you're probably going to have success. We know we can develop pitching. Since our pitching coach has been here, we've had 44 draft picks. 9 of those guys have made the big leagues, 3 first rounders. We got 2 big leaguers right now, and Andrew Chafin and Eric Lauer. So, we know we can develop pitching, so we just got to identify what we feel is the best fit for our program.
I feel like I'm
Go
hearing
ahead.
more. Yeah, I feel like I'm hearing more from coaches. Like that is the first box that seems to be checked now. I'm working like we work with transfers as well here, and I have a few kids I'm working with, and the first question is, does he throw strikes? Like it's not about velocity. It's not about uh, any plus pitches. It's does he throw strikes because we were not great at that this year. It seems to be a pretty common theme from on my end at least.
100%. Our pitching coach he's been here a long time. He played in the big leagues. He don't tolerate no strikes. If you don't throw strikes, you're not coming in here. I promise you. And if you're in here and you don't throw strikes, you're going to be in the bullpen the whole time. We pitch. He is not watching it. So
Yeah.
strikes are probably the number one factor for us.
Zeke, talk through your guys. Obviously, with the portal, especially last summer, it seemed like especially every college at the Division I level, June is we're making sure our portal guys that we need to get in are at least majority of them are taken care of, the spots you need to fill. Talk through kind of how your recruiting timeline in the summer has changed. Are you more focused on portal guys in June and then July you kind of shift to high school? Like what does that look for you guys once the season's over?
Yeah, for sure. I think you said it best right there. June is definitely portal time. You're trying to identify, trying to recruit, trying to build relationships, trying to identify what you need for your program. That's kind of how we're approaching it right now. We actually have one commit so far in the portal. We're taking it slow as we're big on relationships. We're big on our culture. We just don't let anybody in here. But June is definitely the time for us to identify what we need. And then once July hits, then we'll start looking at the younger guys. Obviously, August 1st is approaching the corner, so you got to be able to, evaluate some of these 27s and see which guys would be a fit for your program. But you said it best right there, Kyle. June definitely for portal. We'll still go into July because we don't move as fast as some of these other schools. But July, I would say, is kind of a mix of still a little bit of portal, but mostly high school.
Yeah, would you say your ideal timeline now with everything being shifted back in terms of getting your commitments and your classes done, would you say end of summer trying to wrap up 26s and then really focus on your top 27s, or will you guys just be really aggressive on 27s August all the way through Fort Myers? How does that look?
We'll probably still be doing both. Still be doing 26s and 27s. We only have 4 guys committed in 26. We're not going to go more than 6 guys. Um, like I said, we move kind of slow in the recruiting process because we're really particular about our culture and the fit. We like to really do thorough vetting in the process to make sure, we check all the boxes. So we'll still go through the process of 26s, but once August 1st hits, we'll probably go aggressive on some 27s that we identify are going to be good fits, probably pitchers, just being completely honest, as pitching seems to be the market seems to be really high in the portal. So we'll probably go hard on 27s on the pitching side of things pretty quick. But we'll still be good looking at 26s, all the way to the end, without a doubt.
Yeah. And when you say thorough vetting, you're talking the whole family picture, right? It's not just about the kid and his background. You're there to get the best families in the program, you would say.
Without a doubt, we vet the whole process. We will talk to your high school coach. We'll talk to your travel coach. Anybody that we know that you have a connection to, we are going to talk to them. Because, like I said, we got a lot of tradition, a lot of history in this program, and we feel that the basis of it is our culture. We get guys that come here because they want to be here, not because they had to come here. So we do a really good, thorough process of just making sure everybody's the right fit. And like I said, we got a really special culture, and we're really proud of it.
So, especially it's funny you bring up culture and everything because that seemed like 4 years ago, that was kind of everywhere, right? Like, every school had an identity, an
Mhm.
individual culture, and that doesn't mean they're all the same, there's a bunch of different ones. A lot of people think now that that's just kind of done away with because, year to year, guys are leaving, they're transferring somewhere else, you're bringing in more transfers. What is that identity and culture for Kent State? And how do you I mean, you talk to the parents, you talk to the coaches, but for the player, like your ideal player, Zeke, mentality, attitude, work ethic, what does that look like for Kent State?
Yeah. We talk about a lot with our recruits that our program is built on 3 pillars, pretty much: grit, trust, and pride. We are a northern school, so you got to be gritty to come in here. You are going to play in the cold. Unfortunately, no one likes playing in the cold, but
Kyle doesn't know anything about that.
Kyle could not.
Colorado Springs wasn't that cold. Yeah, you're right, guys. You're right.
So we talk about grit, trust, pride. Grit, you got to be gritty. You got to be gritty to come here. We like guys that play multiple sports. We have a lot of guys that actually played hockey. We really like hockey guys because they're
Yeah.
tough. But being in the Midwest, we get a lot of guys that not just play baseball, they play football, they'll play basketball, and they'll play hockey. So we like those kind of guys because gritty. We like gritty guys, and then trust. We think that the development process as a player really starts to take off when you build that trust with the player. Once you build trust with them and they build trust in you, that's when development really takes off. So we want to have trust with our guys, and then pride. A lot of history, a lot of tradition in this program. So you got to take pride in being here, wanting to be here. So those are the three pillars that we build our foundation of recruiting upon. So that's kind of like what we're looking for and what we identify through that recruiting process if they meet those three pillars. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So with all that, do you feel now more than ever, obviously with a smaller roster for spring, do you feel that it's more important to like it's not the one and done, right? Where you're seeing a kid once and you're pulling the trigger. Like you feel like you want to see a kid play more, get to know him as a kid more, just check as many boxes as possible because you don't have the room for extra guys anymore. So would you say that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely accurate, but I think we're approaching it more as like we didn't over recruit in the first place. I tell all the guys that we have coming in here on visits, we have 40 lockers in our locker room. We had 40 players because the NCAA allowed us to have 40 guys. We didn't bring in 45, 46 and cut guys. No, we had 40 guys. We feel like that's the best we can evaluate and develop as a coaching staff is by having the right amount. So, we are building rosters for 1 year. You want to try to prepare the best you can for the future, but, we don't necessarily over recruit or do anything like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Zeke, I think obviously there's like college coaches now on social media get so much flack and they're just bringing in transfer guys and this and that. But can just take parents and high school players through the anxiety a coach feels coming up to that portal date? Because you may have had some guys come in as freshmen. One of our guys had a really great year for you in center field.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're worried. You're like, man, you may think, oh, this guy, no, I don't think he's gonna leave. And then boom, someone leaves, or you think we're gonna have 5 guys leave and 10 guys leave.
Yeah.
Like how much uncertainty and anxiety is there coming up to that portal date? Because you're like, well, we may not need to fill too many spots, or we may need to fill way more spots than we thought.
Yeah. A lot of anxiety. Uh, I don't think since the portal has opened, I don't think I've slept great in a while, to be completely honest with you, because you're always worried about the things you can't control, unfortunately. Uh, Fortunately for us, we talk about culture, we talk about our foundation. We've only had one guy pretty much enter the portal that we weren't expecting, to be
Sure.
completely honest. And the guys that are coming back, we have a really good foundation coming back. I want to say we have 80% of our roster coming back from a team that went 23-7 in conference and tied for the regular season championship with Miami. So, I think that shows the kind of culture that we have. And you can lay your head down on a pillow at night and feel a little better about it when you know you have a good culture and guys like being there. But at the end of the day, you're still worried about the things you don't know about, things that you can't control. So Kyle, you said it right there. There's a lot of anxiety, to be completely honest, but I do make myself feel better about it when just knowing how good of a culture we have and our guys like being here. So a guy like Micah Ransha-Kirikoff, who's one of your guys who had a really good year this year, he's having a great summer in the Northwoods League. He's coming back. It's kind of unseen nowadays to get really good players back.
Yeah.
We're doing it, and we're proud of it.
Yeah. Yeah, so Zeke, you've been at obviously some great stops in the ACC, playing and coaching. What would you say, obviously being at Kent State now, what are some of the biggest draws there? And since for being there for 2 years, what are some appealing things that parents and players should know about?
Yeah. So, as I said earlier, this is a program that's got a lot of tradition and a lot of history. We take a lot of pride in winning. We take a lot of pride in development. We've had over 140 draft picks in program history. I want to say around 26 big leaguers. We've won the regular season, I want to say around 18 to 20 times. We had a lot of NCAA tournament appearances. We've been to Omaha in 2012. So this is a program that takes a lot of pride in winning, but not just that, it takes a lot of pride in developing players as well. And I think one of the most attractive things about our program outside of the success is our coaching staff. I think we have a coaching staff that has a lot of success, not only playing, but developing as well. Our head coach was a big leaguer in the early 2000s, Jeff Duncan. He played in the big leagues with the Mets. He actually, I think Kyle knows him a little bit when Kyle was getting recruited by Auburn. He was an assistant at Auburn for a little bit, then went to Purdue, and then has been at Kent State for, I think, 12 years. And he's actually the all-time winningest head coach in Kent State baseball history, which is really impressive considering the head coaches that have come through here. Danny Hall, who's close to mine and Kyle's heart, started his head coaching career here. Rick Rimblack, who ended up going to Wake Forest, was a really good head coach. Scott Strickland, now at Georgia Tech, was the head coach at Georgia, took Kent State to Omaha in 2012. So for Coach Duncan to be the all-time winningest head coach here, man, I feel like that's a really, really impressive feature just considering who's been through here in the past. But, I want to say 8 out of the last 12 years, we've won championships, whether that been regular season or conference tournament. And that starts at the top. You got to have a good leader at the top, and we for sure do. And then our pitching coach was a big leaguer as well. He pitched in the big leagues in the 90s with the Brewers and the Braves. Mike Birkbeck, he's been the pitching coach here for a long time, 44 draft picks since he's been here. 9 big leaguers, 3 first rounders, 1 National College Pitcher of the Year. 2016, Eric Lauer, who's in the big leagues right now with the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
Then you got myself as, I caught at Louisville 2016 and 2019 as a catcher, 2 College World Series. I was at GT from 21 to 24 and just finished up my first year here. Our third assistant was a head coach, Dan Bertolini. He was a head coach at Youngstown State for a while, played professionally in independent ball. And then our director of pitching is Cade McClure, who played with me at Louisville, was an All-American at Louisville in 2016, pitched professionally for 8 years up at AAA, was a 6-rounder. So I think, outside of the history of the program, I think our coaching staff is really attractive as well because we can relate to the guys of what they're going through and what they're aspiring to be in professional baseball. So I think, I think you can realize I've given that spiel about 100 times in 2 weeks.
Man, you
say,
just rattled that
yeah.
off like it was nothing, man.
I know. I've done it so many times over these past few weeks. So I think that's one of the attractive things about our program too is our coaching staff, man. We have a really good coaching staff.
So Zeke, obviously your expertise is with catchers. You work with hitters. When you're looking at catchers, you've worked with Kevin Parada. You've worked with, I know you played with Will Smith. You played with Henry Davis. I think you coached Henry.
Yep.
And the other catcher who was behind Henry at Louisville, he was
Dalton
second round
Rushing.
pick. Yep, Dalton Rushing.
He's in the big leagues.
In the big leagues now. So you've been around and helped develop a lot of really good catchers, high draft picks, big leaguers. When you're out looking at a catcher in particular that you're making a decision on, do I want this guy? Do I not? Whether he's a portal guy or a high school guy, what are the things that you really key in on that makes that decision for you?
Arm strength, for one. I like catchers with arm strength. I like size. I want big catchers. I like a big target behind the plate. And then presence. How do you interact with the pitcher? How do you interact with the umpire? How do you interact with your teammates? You're an energy vampire behind the plate. You show the umpire up.
Yep.
Are you talking to the pitcher? Things like that. We actually just committed a portal catcher a few days ago, and I went up to the Northwoods League and saw him. And the first thing that stood out to me was his size. He's about 6'4", 220. I like that a lot. And then I saw him throw to second base, and he has a hose. And I thought that guy's got the foundation.
Hey, decision made right there, right?
Easy. And then I watched him take BP, and he was dropping tanks. I was like, that's a no brainer. But arm strength for me, I think I can help with the other intangibles like receiving, blocking, footwork, transfer. But the things that I can't really control, like the arm strength, accuracy, things like that. I think you got to have a good foundation for something to work with. And I think arm strength is a really big one for me. Arm action. I like a good arm action. I don't look for guys that throw too low, 3/4, get that.
You don't want that sinker going out to second base.
But as I've evolved as a coach through my coaching career, I've learned ways that you can help change an arm action a little bit without getting people hurt.
Yeah.
And I learned that through Kevin Parada. Kevin had a little bit of a different arm action. He kind of changed it up a little bit, shortened it up, cleaned it up. He's 11th overall pick and is playing in Double-A. So there are some things you can do to help clean up an arm action, but it's still something that's a little scary for me. I don't want to mess with someone and hurt somebody. So arm strength is big for me, though.
Would you say you're definitely a defensive first eval for you when looking at catching? Like you'll sacrifice offense a little bit if the guy's stealing strikes, blocking, and doing everything to help the pitching staff?
100%. It's crazy to say that because the game right now is so offensive. Everything's
Yeah.
about scoring runs. Like, it's a nightmare to be a pitching coach right now in college baseball because everyone's putting up 11 runs a game. But for me, I think, your catcher, your shortstop, your center fielder, when you're strong up the middle of the field defensively, you got the foundation to win. You get the foundation to play at a high level, especially behind the plate. I think behind the plate, you get the catcher obviously impacts every single pitch in some capacity. So if you got a guy that can steal strikes, that's how you impact the game the most because you have the most opportunities by doing that. So defense for me as a catcher first is an absolute no-brainer. I feel like our coaching staff here can help you become offensive. I didn't say we could teach you to hit, but we could teach you to be competitive in the box. So I think catching first and then offense second for me without a doubt.
So
Yeah, I
Zeke,
think
staying on the catchers, like what is that hierarchy of most important thing defensively? Is blocking ability number one? Is it framing? Is it arm strength? Your pop time, let's just say generally speaking. Like how do you rank those three things? Like what's the most important, what's second, what's third when you're making evaluations on guys?
As an evaluator, I for me, arm strength is probably the most important. Arm strength and presence. You got to be able to catch the baseball, obviously, but I feel like I can help develop receiving. I feel that's one of my strengths as a catching coach. So I'm not crazy big on making sure they're a great receiver when I'm evaluating them.
Yeah.
I think I can teach blocking. I think blocking is one of the easiest things to teach uh, as a catching coach. You just got to be on time, put your body in the right spot, and put
Yeah.
yourself in a good position. But as an evaluator, arm strength for sure. Like you got to have arm strength. I want guys with arm strength. I think that just is like kind of gone to the wayside a little bit because everything's now about offense and receiving.
Yeah.
But in our conference, people like to run. You got to have arm strength. Uh, so for sure, arm strength and presence is the biggest one for me as an evaluator. But now when you're catching in college baseball, I think receiving is the biggest one. If you come here with arm strength, you already have that tool. That's a check that box. You got to receive, plain and simple. In college baseball, the best way to impact the game as a catcher is through receiving. You get so many more opportunities. I mean, you get 150 maybe opportunities a game as a catcher to impact the game. If you can steal one strike, you could change the whole impact of a game. So once you get on campus, you get in my system, you got to be able to receive.
Yeah, I think one of the just scrolling through social media, one thing that's been pretty eye-opening is all the data they're showing on the kid from Coastal with how many strikes have been stolen this year, and, like, I think I heard on the broadcast the other day that their ERA is, like, a whole run lower when he's back there over the course of his career, or maybe it was this season, but,
Yep.
uh, yeah, it's pretty eye-opening to see that type of stuff for sure, and for you, I'm sure it's fun to watch.
Oh yeah, it's fun to watch unless he's catching against the Cards, which he was doing yesterday. He's pretty good though. I mean, that guy's going to play
Yeah,
baseball for a really long time, and I think he won the Gold Glove yesterday, which rightfully so. I mean, he definitely earned that,
yeah,
and I mean, he's on track to, maybe getting them a national championship for the second time. So he's doing a
yeah.
great job.
Yeah. So Zeke, let's talk about once you get guys committed and the guys you have on campus. So for guys who are going to be coming in this fall, do you have those guys enrolling early? Are they playing a whole thing of summer ball? What do you guys do with those incoming freshmen? How do you guys handle the summer?
Yep. Uh, they don't enroll early. They get here the same time everybody else does. They might move in a few days earlier on freshman check-in, but we kind of leave it up to them on if they want to play summer ball or not. We have more of kind of an influence on the pitching side of things, as we play a lot of games in the fall and we try to compete at a high level in the fall. So we'll have more of a say on the pitching side of things if the guy's thrown too many innings in high school. But from a position player standpoint, we kind of leave that up to them. Like, do you want to play summer ball? Do you want to continue that, or do you want to enjoy your last price summer ever as a kid? That's kind of up to them. That's kind of how we approach it.
Yeah, and what about your current players? Do you guys kinda tailor the summer towards a guy didn't play, for example, so you send him to the Northwoods where he's gonna get a ton of at bats versus a guy that just might need exposure in the Cape or somebody that just needs to get stronger over the course of the summer? Is that all pretty tailored to each guy?
100%. I would say probably 80% of our guys right now are in summer ball. We like the Northwoods League. We've sent a lot of guys to the Northwoods League. We have a lot of guys there right now. Micah's there right now, one of your guys, Kyle.
Yep.
He's having a really good summer for Kalamazoo Growlers. But we got some guys in the NECBL. We got some guys going up to the Cape. I don't think we have anybody right now on like a strength program. We do have a few candidates that should be on it, but they need to play as well. Uh, so we're really big components of going out in the summer and playing because obviously the best way of developing is you got to play the game, plain and simple. So we use this summer as an opportunity to get better, and our players know how much us as a coaching staff we value summer baseball.
So you talk about how in the fall you guys have a really competitive schedule. You play a lot of games. Just take parents and players through how important that freshman fall is for the future of a player's career in
Hmm.
college baseball. Because I think a lot of guys, they don't understand that that freshman fall is where that impression is made, and a lot of times it's really hard to change that impression once it's made.
100%. You said it best. It's your first impression. So the more prepared you can come in the fall, the better. The better you can have your body in shape, in game shape, and things like that, the better. We approach the fall a little differently than most schools. For the first 2 weeks, the newcomers, so the transfers and the freshmen, they'll be with our coaching staff for 2 weeks, and our returners are kind of on their own for 2 weeks from a baseball standpoint. Now they'll lift as a team together at 7:30 in the morning, and they'll lift as a team, do lifts, do some team building stuff. But from a baseball perspective, we have the newcomers just to the coaching staff so they can get adjusted to us, so we can get adjusted to them because the older guys know what to expect. So we're kind of getting the young guys, the new guys up to speed. But the more prepared you can come in, the better off because it's going to honestly probably be a nightmare for most freshmen because it's just a different time in your life. You're trying to balance, class, nutrition, sleep, things like that. And not to mention you're in a locker room with grown men for the first time in your life. So that could be scary as well. So it's crucial to come in prepared. And you see, it happens all the time. You see some freshmen just get swallowed up by the fall and some thrive. It just, there's not really a science to it, but there's kind of a foundation when you come in prepared. Usually those guys are, you know, survive or fit to survive. And when you come in out of shape and not ready, usually those guys get swallowed up and most of the time they end up out of the program pretty quick.
Yeah. Where do you feel like you have seen the freshmen struggle the most? Is it just managing the life of kind of being on their own for the first time? Is it physically, mentally? Like where have you seen that over the last 2 years?
Yep, I'd say time management is probably the biggest one. You see some freshmen, their first fall, their grades aren't great because they're trying to figure out, the time management of class and your social life and
Go have
miss
fun.
it.
Yeah.
You don't want to miss anything. So things like that. But then physically as well too, just the weight room. We take a lot of pride in the weight room. We really like physicality. We like physical guys. So we get after it in the weight room all the time. So I see guys struggle there because you haven't really been pushed like that. And you don't want to mess up as a freshman. So, you probably want to try to lift more weight than you're capable of doing and things like that. So you could risk injury. So physically, I think that's a big one as well. You see guys come in behind you. Sometimes a freshman will surprise you now and they'll come in and they'll be the strongest guy on the team because they've been with the strength coach. And
Yep.
usually you get guys like that are multi-sport guys like football players and things like that. But I would say time management and physical is probably the two biggest adjustments that incoming freshmen have to make.
So Zeke, earlier you talked about how when you're evaluating a player and you're watching them, you're not results oriented. And I think that's something that everyone needs to hear because I think so many kids and parents, they see a coach with a school hat on somewhere behind home plate and the kid immediately thinks, right, I got to go 3 for 3 with like 3 doubles or 2 home runs. And you inevitably see them just trying to do way too much, massive swings, and they look terrible.
Hmm.
And one of the things we try to tell our guys is you can impress a coach going 0 for 3, like you said. 8 pitch at bat, you end up getting out. Okay, you had a professional bat, line out somewhere. You got out, but you still crushed the ball. So, talk about ways players can impress you when you're evaluating them without just like lighting up the scoreboard when you're there.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say like this, not just in my case, I'd say most college coaches, if we're coming to watch you play, you're obviously talented in some capacity. There's something that you do well that has got us there to watch you. So obviously the talent level is there, but how you approach the game, how you play the game, that's going to really take you to the next level, in my opinion, especially for me. If you bounce around, if you're the first one out of the dugout, if you hustle, if you interact with your teammates, if you're a good teammate, how you react after a bad call. Those are all factors to what are going to, get you recruited, evidently, in my opinion. The talent level, obviously, you want talented guys. You got to have some tool in order to play in college baseball, whether that's speed, power, velocity, a good breaking ball. You can really play defense, you steal bases, something like that. So, the tools are important. I don't want to neglect your tools, but I would say how you approach the game and how you interact, and also how you interact on the phone when college coaches talk to you. It's getting harder and harder to talk to young kids because just socially, they don't know how to carry on a conversation. So it could be difficult. The kids that can really set them apart are the kids that, carry on a conversation and are good in the phone and are interested in your program and things like that. That usually helps as well.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to ask earlier in terms of recruiting the high school player is roster wise, would you say you're trying to stay up the middle for the most part with shortstop, catcher, center fielder in high school and work around them if you are bringing in transfers? And I guess also with that, what position, what position or positions do you see kind of struggling the most on the recruiting side of things at the high school level?
Yeah. For sure. On the high school level, we want to be able to add, guys that play up the middle of the field because typically when you do that, you're athletic, you can play all over. So if we got an older shortstop, you come in as a shortstop, we can slide you over to second. You can probably go over to second. Same thing with center field. Usually you don't see too many catchers move out from there. But some do. We have an athletic 26 committed that ran a 6'5". He's a catcher. He's going to make the area code games.
Like Zeke Pinkham.
I mean, add a second there and you probably got it set.
Oh man.
But yeah, to answer your question on that, and I would say the pos- the position that I see struggle the most at the high school level is honestly shortstops. You don't really see very many good defensive shortstops at the high school level. It's very few and far between, in my opinion. I haven't seen one in a while, to be completely honest. You can see a center fielder go out and get it, and you can see that, but you don't see too many fundamentally sound shortstops. They get around the baseball, they throw it well, they lighten their feet, things like that. So I'd say shortstop's probably the lightest one I'd see.
So what you're saying is like when you go out there and you're trying to recruit a shortstop, you inevitably vast majority of the time come away from that like, oh, I might like the bat, but he can't play shortstop for us. He maybe play second, maybe play third,
Hmm.
maybe put him out in the outfield, but he ain't gonna play shortstop.
No, you can hopefully pray on it and project it, but very few times that'll happen. I think that's why you have the luxury of the transfer portal. Actually, Coach Duncan tells a story. Our shortstop this year, who was all MAC, Luke Matthews, really good player. He went to go see a kid in the portal last year play shortstop, and he saw Luke Matthews just bouncing around and in and out in pregame. I mean, fielding everything, moving around, just lighting his feet, really good. And he ended up getting that kid committed. And the kid that he went to see, he's like, I don't want that guy anymore. I want this guy.
Yeah.
But that just shows you like older guys, what I'm saying, guys that are mature physically, things like that. And, once you got a year or 2 years of college instruction, you've been around someone that's done it, someone that knows what they're doing, things like that. I think that is where the transfer portal puts them over the top, like older guys. But, there'll still be some guys like I remember Ramsey sending me to see Billy Carlson, the kid that's, I think, going to Tennessee, going to be a first rounder. I remember I was going to Alpharetta High School to watch that kid play. He played for BPA. And I was
Yep.
sitting there with Mississippi State and Ole Miss, and I'm watching him just take ground balls in between innings. And I mean, it's like as smooth as it gets. And I'm like, holy crap, this kid can play shortstop. Now I went to watch him. Ramsey didn't give me like any background about him. Like kid's like top 10 ranked or anything. Like they say, hey, this kid's pretty good. Just like go check him out. Check him out. And I walk out and like, Ramsey, this kid's a freaking stud. And he's like top 20 in the country. And I'm like, oh, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah, that was a test. He was like, "Hey, let me see what Zeke thinks about
he was
this guy."
testing it out. But like things like that kid set himself apart because you don't see kids like that. You know what I'm saying? Like he was so polished, and that's why he's going to be a first rounder. And that's probably why shortstops in high school get drafted because you don't see very many of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the last last thing I have is just talk about the academic requirements. Like what GPA are you targeting? What makes a kid, I mean, a no-brainer from a transcript standpoint for you guys?
Yeah, anything over a 3.0 or better, high test scores, that always helps, especially from a school perspective where you can get financial aid money. Um, you know, some schools are like that, some schools aren't. The higher the academic, the probably the least likely that is. Uh, but anytime you can help the athletic department with financial aid in the baseball program, you're going to become very attractive to that program. So just being able to have good grades in all aspects helps. And then not just that, like all coaches want to look good when you're here. You want to have a good GPA as a team. So just being able to get here in school and to continue the high academics always puts you in a good spot.
Level. This is why